this is probably the most important thing. How you coach. And this is very subjective. I can't say to you, this is how you should do it. I can't tell you, I want you to coach this. That would be foolish. Why do your players turn up? Why do players turn up? Why do they come to training? Because they want to play. Because they need to play, they want to play a game. Now I deliver this more to blokes who coach 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. Still relevant with men. Quite often when I do coaching clinics, some bloke always puts his hand up and says, well, it's all right for you because you've got your players 4 or 5 days a week. We only get them twice a week. And quickly I'll say, what a load of bullshit. You've got them for 3, maybe 4 hours a week, and in that 3 or 4 hours a week, you can make that as efficient and as fun and as much of a learning environment as you possibly can. Well, you're all right, coach, because your players are told to turn up. I can only get 10 training. I quickly assume, well, you must be born as a coach then. You must be born as a coach. I've heard it through the time forever that 10 players will turn up for a coach, where another coach comes in and all of a sudden they all come out the woodwork, and that previous coach says, well, they never used to turn up for me. You bored them. You bored them. You did the same things. You had little innovation. You wouldn't prepare your sessions. We'll just go play touch and pass. We'll do 3 or 4 mind-numbing structured drills towards the back end of training, and then I'll see you on Saturday afternoon. They come to play a game. You've got to make it fun. In my experience, players learn far more with games than they do with structured drills. Far more with games. I'll have to prove this, because I keep saying it, so I'll have to prove this next one. But I always say that if I was to get a group of 20 men, and for 6 months I'll go play some games with them, and just play competitive games where I alter the rules, I'll put some conditioned rules in place, where they have to do certain things in those games. Got to pass it twice, got to pass it 3 times every play. Every time you get on side, one defender's got to get down on the deck. Some sort of conditioned rules where they've got to then meet those rules. I reckon have a better team, a highly skilled team, a more competitive team, a more conditioned team for skill than those who have just been structured and drilled and in the classroom. That's not new, is it? People learn through games, everybody. We all understand that. But there is an element of drills. There is an element of repetition and doing it and doing it and doing it. I'll give you something. At the end of 2014, I've said this to Peter while I've been on camp, at the end of 2014 season with the Rhinos, we tailored off, we bounced out of playoffs, we only just made playoffs, and then we got bounced out in round 1 of playoffs. And without going into detail, my assumption was we weren't skillful enough under pressure. So nice and sunny outside, we got some white poles on the ground and we're running shapes, absolutely, everybody can put a shape on. But when there's some 100-kilo blokes flying in at you and there's a level of fatigue, to nail that skill, to be able to nail that catch, to be in position, I think is a word for, which is an underestimated word in our game, I would say. I don't think my players were conditioned enough to be skillful. Now that's not fitness. I'd take them to my trainer. They'd make the same marks in training, get the same tests in pre-season. They met all the same criteria, but under pressure they weren't conditioned enough for skill. So when fatigue set in, a bit of an injury, a bit of a bust nose, and maybe the opposition just had the wood over us, maybe the opposition were dominant through the game, we still weren't skillful enough to maybe make the catch or make the pass. So at the end of 2014, building up for the 2015 season, we did more skill than we've ever done before. We at least doubled, and in some occasions trebled in pre-season the amount of skill that we did. That was tackle technique, that was catching, that was passing, that was getting balls on the deck, and big one for us is loose balls. Everybody talks about getting on a loose ball. Who hasn't talked about getting on a loose ball? It's an indicator, isn't it? If a ball goes on the deck and you're the first bloke on that loose ball, it's almost an indicator whether you're hungry for the game. Who practiced loose ball recovery? Whoever practices loose ball recovery. So we have a drill, and we came up with a drill, and there's maybe 6 or 7 facets, which was catching, passing, catching high balls, catching low balls, getting on the ball on a deck, goal line D. some occasions, some snapshots of rugby league we brought out, put it into drill form and made them go through a drill. This is in pre-season. That drill took us 55 minutes to start with. And we've got some old men getting down from dummy half. Who practices dummy half passing? Anybody practice dummy half passing? Anybody get your players to practice dummy half passing? How many times in training does a non-dummy half player get to dummy half and pass the ball? How many times have you shifted the ball across the field, your 9 doesn't get there, and your winger or your centre or your back row has then got to get to the dummy half and pass it? And how many times is that an important pass where the next shape, we're going to get them, and he gets down there and he puts this ball that goes over there, and the first receiver tries to get down there to catch it, the shape's gone. And you go, you needed to be better than that dummy half pass. How many times you practice it? So we went through this drill that took us 55 minutes. We got that down to 25 minutes. And just by repetition of doing the same drills and same skills, they become more conditioned to nail that skill. See, this blew me away. And I don't know whether it's true. It's a theory. I don't think anybody's got an ability to prove it. There's a fella called Malcolm Gladwell who wrote a book called Outliers, and it was about where you're from, which increases success. And if you're from a really an intellectual background where you're affluent and you don't have to spend that much time digging coal out the ground, you're going to be more successful than those that do have to dig coal out the ground that I don't have much spare time. He was trying to get rid of the myth that talent in itself is a bit of a myth. You've got to have opportunity. You've got to have, and one of the things he highlighted was 10,000 hours. And he talked about the Beatles, Bill Gates. He talked about some world-class people that spent an unbelievable amount of time doing certain things. And what he said in the book, he said, who'd spend 10 years, which is roughly about 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, depending on what hours a day you want to do. 4 or 5 hours a day for 4 or 5 days a week for 10 years. Who'd spend that amount of time for 10 years doing anything? You've got to enjoy it. So if you understand this then, if you understand this and believe that with 10 years of quality practice, your players will become better, world-class players. Okay? This gets on to how much time then in a session would the coach My boy's 17 and my other lad's 7. Don't ask why, I don't know why, they've got a big gap. But I go watch them, I've watched my 17-year-old train, and it irks me to watch some coaching. Not because the coach isn't Wayne Bennett, I understand that some of them are not going to be, they haven't had the exposure to coaching that I've been fortunate to have. But they just talk too much. Coaches talk too much. If you can nail some of this, and get some of this, and certainly this bit here, my tip to you all would be play more games at training, spend less time on drills and less time on structured stuff. If you can nail some of this, for sure. But I can't get enough hours into my team. This sold me. I read the book about 5 years ago. I can't get enough hours of catch and pass and running. You know, we're asking our players to come up with world-class efforts. No matter what level you play at, you're asking them to come up with world-class efforts, whether it's a long break they've made and they've got the fullback and they've got a 2v1 with a fullback, and how many players don't nail that pass and you hammer them, but how many times do you practice that pass? So I can't get enough hours into them. So if you get your players for an hour and a half, how much time do you spend talking as a coach? I've seen coaches spend an hour and a half and the players will train for half an hour. Not just half an hour and then he talks for an hour, but he'll let them go, bring them back in, he'll let them go, bring them back in. Oh, I need to speak a bit more. And the education part of training can be a problem. I came through an educational system as a player. My best coach was, I've already said, and he was a huge educational coach. So he would talk for hours and hours and hours, and I learned so much off him about how the game should be played. I don't know whether I was good enough at the time. I didn't spend enough hours on the ground. I didn't find enough bullets with it. I didn't get enough time on the ranges to fire the bullets to get to be a good shot. I just knew how to play. He educated me how to play. I would say a lot of coaches let that get in the way. Let that get in the way. And as soon as the drill breaks down, they have to step in and correct the drill. So this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to work. And then once you go to the green cone, and go to the white cone, and you go to the yellow cone. And this is the reason we're doing the drill, because our goal line D, or whatever, wasn't as it should be. Do we all understand what's happening? Have you got this? They all go, right, okay. The coach steps away, lets the drill go. The drill goes for about 30 seconds. Some bloke makes an error. Listen in, bring it here. I need to explain to you again what we're doing. Right, okay, and we know what we're doing. And then you go to the white cone, green cone, yellow cone, and we're going to do some goal line D. Do you understand? Got this, right? Come on, you bloke, switch on. Step to one side. Away you go, fellas. Go for about a minute. Another error. Right, bring it in, listen. No, that's just all about you. That's just you as a coach. You're just scared to death of having the drill break down because it looks bad on you. This one has been with me for a long time. Let them work it out. Let them work it out. The biggest penny dropping moments in my coaching career, the one where the penny has dropped both for me and the players, is when they have worked it out. Where a drill breaks down and you just stand there and go, yeah, go on. Yeah, carry on. I'll tell you, they will work it out. Unless you've got a group of men that have never, ever run with a ball in their hand ever, more often than not, they'll end up working it out. The coaching clinics I do at Leeds, one of the biggest tests for me is I get a local group of 16-year-old kids in, 15, 16-year-old kids. And I actually coach these kids in front of coaches that have been invited in the community, amateur coaches. So about 50 to 60 coaches turn up. And I go through a session with 15, 16-year-old kids. I'll tell you, I shit myself. You try coaching when people are watching you, I shit myself. Because as soon as you, like, everybody's like, oh, what does he sound like then? And God, he's not good. Look at him, his legs, they're horrible. You know, it's horrible coaching in front of people. I make an error with the Rhinos, nobody knows. You know, and there's, all right, yeah, I got that wrong, fellas, never mind. Let's move on to the next drill and all that kind of, nobody knows. You go coach in front of 50 amateur coaches who are all taking notes. It's a performance, I'll tell you. And one of the things we do, I'll wrap some of this off. This is along the philosophy of let them work it out, let the players work it out. Don't step in too much. Put your ego away, coaches. Don't be worried that the drill is going to make an error. We did a bit of this week with the Hawks. It's just a real simple drill. Who scrutinises their team in Unit D for somebody leaving the line? Or somebody being a blip in the line? Who scrutinises it? You hold them accountable, don't you? So if somebody's not up, or if somebody's too far up, or if somebody's too wide, and if somebody's... So other than Unit D itself, where you're saying, right, go take it two players one way for a shot coming the other way, now the unit then can go practice that. Who then practices running where the players have to just simply keep space and keep in line with each other? Yet you scrutinise your players every single week for being sometimes a foot out of line. You blow the whistle, you're stepping around, let me stop the drill, I've seen you, you're a foot in front of everybody. It's really hard. The military works on this time after time after time. They still do it because it's discipline, but years ago, the military, hundreds of years ago, used to go to war like this, just march in a big line. And they would spend hours in a drill sergeant looking down a line of 30 or 40 men, walking down the field or walking down the drill square, and nobody should ever get out of line. And we, as coaches, often scrutinise our players with that same level of intensity, yet how many times do we let them practice that? So just as a drill, I've seen some real benefits with my teams over the years. 5 men inside some cones. The deal being these fellas here have to start on the cones. They have to be on the cones. Everybody else would get spacing off these end people. They would move forward to these cones and then where they would adjust. This fella would adjust to this cone. Everybody else would need to get spacing off him. So at the end of it, I talk a lot about snapshots. If you take a photograph of that there, what does it look like? And it should look exactly the same up there. So the deal being, with enough practice, with enough muscle memory, with enough of this and enough of this, they will become very, very good at moving as a unit and defending whatever shape the opposition are going to throw at you. So I'll get it back to these 16s. So I'm explaining to these amateur coaches that just let the players go, just let the players go. We're going to do some Unit D tonight. I'm explaining to 50 coaches and the 16-year-olds are warming up at the back of me. I said, we're going to do a drill. And at the end of this drill, in 10 minutes, I'll guarantee you, these fellas will be able to move in line with each other and not be a blip in the line effectively. And they all looked at me and went, yeah, all right, good luck, good luck. I started to sweat and got nervous. And then the bit where the players have lined them up, it says, give us 5 people there, another 5 people ready and waiting, another 5 people, you had about 20 lads, 4 groups of 5. So every time they made an error, whether they were setting off too early or whether they started to adjust too early or these fellas here didn't make the cones before they started to adjust that way or started to adjust that way. Every time I blew the whistle and just got them out of the way. Just simply got them out of the way. Error, move, get out of the way. Right, next group are ready, go. I'm stood in front of them and I'm going to give them an indicator whether they move left or right. No, gone, get out of the way. No, move, gone, get out of the way. And they knew what it was. And after about 3 or 4 attempts, they were still at the back there. I said, you know what's happening, don't you? You fellas on the cones have got to be on the cones. You can't adjust till you hit the second set of cones. Have we got this? Cool, let's go. And just let them bang out about another 10. At the same time, I'm feeling the eyes from the coaches going, you're just going to f up here. You're going to royally f up this one, aren't you? And there was a bit of nerves, but I've seen it so many times, I was all right, I was cool. I knew the players would get it. No, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. And it wasn't a case of, get out the way, I'm not going to speak to it. It was, no, you failed, you needed to be on the cone. No, you failed, you adjusted too early. No, you failed, you adjusted too late. Give them some correction, but the philosophy was, just let them get through the drill. Let them make the errors. And I can't believe how big my head went when after about 5 minutes of this drill, they ended up starting to get it. They ended up starting to adjust with each other. They ended up starting to be in position to such a degree where I actually turned my back on them and said, fellas, carry on. And I addressed the 50 coaches and said, listen, if I could guarantee you that in your unit D in a game, never mind where there's a ball in the field here today, this is just a drill. But in your unit D, if you could get your players to have this level of discipline while moving as a unit, would you have this? All 50 of them. Yeah, of course we would, of course we would. The philosophy was, let them make the drill, let them work it out themselves.